starting Be'ez Hashem Siman Tes Zayin, Maamar Shalosh Shevuos, and now we're going back to the subject of whether the Shevuos Shelo Yalu B'Choyma means with permission from the nations, even then it's forbidden, or it means only with a war.
So the Avnei Nezer seems to hold, like the few that holds, it's allowed with permission from the nations, and he doesn't really bring any strong proof as to why Rabbi Yochanan Eifshitz, in the words, he says it's just a drasha without bringing anyone who holds against him or not trying to prove his own point.
Right. Well, we're getting to that. I mean, he's strong enough to argue on Rabbi Yochanan Eifshitz. He doesn't have to just give in because Rabbi Yochanan Eifshitz said something. But the point is that the Avnei Nezer himself was choizer. We spoke last time that he in Siman Tuf Nun Vav, 2 Siman later, someone asked him about what he said, and he said, "You know why I wrote that it might be a pekida, it might be a divine remembrance?" He says, because he says, just stam to say that if the Goyim let us go back during exile, that's not, that it's mutter to go back, that's not possible to say. Because first of all, there's a Gemara in Yuma Daf Tes. The Gemara says that going back with permission is still called b'choyma. So the Avnei Nezer used that Gemara to, as a proof. And then what he doesn't say is that there's another shvuah of Shelo Yimru Dibu Umais. So if the shvuah of going up as a wall means with a war, then that's the same thing as rebelling against the Umais. So there's good reasons why he was chayzer. So in the end he comes out that going up as a wall means even peacefully. But why Rashi say Yad Chazaka? Because Rashi's trying to say that if they give permission for the whole Jewish people to come up, it's like Koresh. It's like the time of Ezra, where a king gives permission for everybody to come up. So then it's like a geula.
Right, it definitely wasn't the case anyhow in the time of Zionism, because the British had limitations which you can and which can't.
Yeah, they didn't let very many people in.
Even after the war, when they made more legions, now much less Jews, still no, they didn't allow everybody to just like that.
Right.
Even then, there were regulations, who can enter, who can't.
Yeah, there was a big pressure on them to let some people in after the war, but they only let a few.
Yeah.
Okay, so V'hinei ba'avnei nezer yoredei siman taf nun vav dacha b'shtei yadayim es divrei hashoyel. He pushes away with 2 hands the words of the shoyel who asked a question. Shehevi misefer avos yonasan. He brings down the avos yonasan. He says that it's aser even with permission. Dafilu b'shus kol amim chol hashvua shlo ilalus le'eretz Yisrael yachad. V'chol rayasoi eino ela miloshen Rashi zal. And when the Avnei Nezer proves this wrong, he proves it from the words of Rashi, who says shekasat biyad chazaka.
And not anyone who openly said against Rabbi Yochanan Eifshitz held. I mean, he doesn't bring anybody who in Rabbi Yochanan argue with him.
V'im hu b'rshus, so the Avnei Nezer says if it's permission, then ein zeh biyad chazaka. That's not called with a strong hand. V'al kein kasav she'ef shalazus mipirish Rashi zal. He says you can't move from Rashi. And just to see it inside,
But that means the Avnei Nezer held that Rashi was indisputable.
He held that lahalacha we don't paskin against the Rishon if you just have an achron who said a drasha against it.
Although there are times when it does happen.
Yeah, well, it could happen if it's said lahalacha, but here it wasn't even said lahalacha. What he said is a drasha. But let's see it inside. Take a look what he says.
Highlighted?
Yeah, highlighted. On the first page of the Maamar Koimis.
Yes.
On Parshas V'Oschanan, Haftorah of Shabbos Nachamu.
Yes.
Says Al Har Gavoya Ali Lach Mevaseres Tzion. He says, you announcer of Tzion, go up on a high mountain.
Well known pasuk.
And the Mevaseres is Lashon Nekeva.
Yes.
So Pirish Rashi has a problem here. Why does it say Lashon Nekeva? And later on it says Mevaser Toev Mashmi Yeshua. There it says Lashon Zachar.
Yes.
So why is the announcer masculine or feminine? What's the difference? So Pirish Rashi kan ksiv mevaseres Lashon Nekeva ulahalon ksiv ragli mevaser Lashon Zachar. Loimar. What does this teach? Im zachu, if the Yidden have the merit to have a fast redemption with nisim and amazing things, kal kazachar. It'll be fast like a male. You could run fast, but loy zachu, if they're not so zoicha, then tashkin akeva, the redemption will be weak like a female. V'chulu. Ayin sham. That's what Rashi says. V'yuvan gam madichsiv yishbati eschem enois Yerushalayim. So the Rabbi Yochanan Eifshitz says that's what the shvuah in Shiur Shirim means. It means that the Yidden are talking. The Jewish people is talking to the nations. Up till now, we learned the shvuah is that Hashem is talking to the Jewish people. And he's saying, I'm making you swear not to go back. Now, he's learning differently. He's learning that the Jewish people are talking to the nations, and they're saying like this: Hishpati eschem, I make you swear, b'nois Yerushalayim, you nations of the world, b'tzvayis b'ayalis asada, by the deer in the hinds of the field, im ta'iru v'im ta'iru eso'ava, not to arouse or awaken the love, meaning you nations don't arouse me to come back to Eretz Yisrael before it's time. Ad shetechpatz, until she wants. What's the she? The techpatz hu kinu l'nekeva. This techpatz is feminine, right? The tough hameshemesh is kenoida, like the tough is the feminine prefix. V'zehu pirushai. This is what it means. The Knesset Yisrael tzavcha. The Jewish people cries out, the Olo Vishvua, with an oath. Im to'iru v'im to'iru eso'ava. They say to the Goyim, don't arouse the love neged kibbutz Yisraeli, to gather the Jewish people in. Be'im, even if, he says, shahakol noyadu yachdav leilech Yerushalayim, even if the whole Jewish people is ready to go, the chol umos maskim, and all the nations of the world agree, which by the way never happened, but even if it would happen, even then, she says, I won't go there. Why? The end time is unknown, and maybe this is not the real time. Maybe it's just a temporary eis ratzon. Maybe today or tomorrow they're going to do a Averis again. They're going to have to go into Golus again. Chas v'shalom. God forbid the next exile could be worse than the first. You never know. So he says, therefore, the Jewish people asked the Goyim that they shouldn't go, they shouldn't give them Eretz Yisrael ad shetechpatz, until the nekeva, until the female redemption comes, which is the slow redemption. In other words, maybe we're not zeicher to have a fast redemption. Maybe we have to wait for the slow one. So we have to wait until it comes. Ad she'yigiyas man, she'imali kol haaretz deya, then the whole world will be filled with knowledge. And misham v'hala hivtiach ilas kol ilos, then the cause of all causes promises shelo yiyah neder min ha'umma Yisraelis klum. Then we won't be lacking anything. V'zeh ha'zman ha'amiti. That's the true time. Okay? So that's the Avos Yonasan. Agav, there's an interesting thing that the Zionists want to bring down. This is what I've quoted in the next couple of pages. There are two more Avos Yonasans on this subject. And some of them seem to contradict this one. So take a look in page 2 of the Maamar Koimus. Last line on the page, last two lines actually. Oy Yoimar. He says it could be the pasuk means the la'asid kishi agia eis doidim. When the time comes for the geula, yigzor malchus gzeiros al Yisrael. Maybe a government of some country will make decrees against the Yidden. These nadru libam leilech v'lader be'eretz Yisrael. Then they on their own will get up and move to Eretz Yisrael. Uve'eis hahi niyasa eis tzar Yaakov. It will be a dangerous time for the Jewish people. V'yishma Hashem es sakosam. Hashem will hear their cry. V'yirachim aleim. He'll have rachmanas on them. V'yishlach lifneim Mashiach. He'll send Mashiach. Okay. He'll return the exiles.
Right, it says Mashiach hopefully. It doesn't say that that they'll send mighty soldiers, or
exactly.
People like Herzl.
Not only that, he says that even before this Mashiach comes, the Yidden aren't going to be back in Eretz Yisrael.
Of course.
A few will run away from this oppressive government, but not everybody. And Mashiach will be the one to bring back the rest of the
right, so it very much proves against what they believe in, by far.
Okay, then, next page 4.
But any other Zionists do want a military redemption with men, so all against what it said, how we should also at first.
Okay, then in page 4 we have a shtickle on Parsha Shoftim, where he says, he brings down the Shalosh Shevuos again, and he says, Hishbiya HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'Knesset Yisrael. Hashem made the Yidden swear. This is not exactly the same. There he said the Jewish people are the ones swearing. Now he's saying Hashem made us swear Shelo Yalu Kechoyma Pirush Shelo Yitoisfu Yisrael Lehilachem Bechazka, that the Jews shouldn't fight a war with strength. So he says it's only fighting a war, right?
Yeah.
V'gam Shelo Yarbu B'Tfila Yois Tumidai. Then the other oath is that they shouldn't daven, pray too much for the redemption. The Isa B'Gemara, the Bava Metzia, he says the Gemara in Bava Metzia gives an example of what is called, what does praying too much mean. He said if you wake up all the three avos at the same time and they all daven for the Geula, Mashiach would come.
Yeah, like Rabbi Chanina was able to.
Rabbi Chanina, I think it was Rabbi.
No, Rabbi Chanina had the power to daven and bring the Gila. It was known.
Yeah.
Eliyahu told Rabbi, another one who could do it is Rabbi Chanina.
Okay, maybe you're right. Okay, so he said, wake up all the three of us. So that's what he did, and they all davened, and then. No. He said that also the two sons of Rabbi. That's what you mean. Bnei Rabbi Chia, right?
Rabbi
two sons of Rabbi Chia.
Or Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Chia, right? Rabbi Chia and his sons, right, were able to awaken the Avos and bring the Geulah.
So what Rabbi did is he made Rabbi Chia and his two sons all daven for the Amud, and then the Geulah was almost about to come.
But Midas didn't stand, not time yet.
Right. So that was called davening too much. He says, "V'atam hu dehishbiya HaKadosh Baruch Hu mipnei de'agula shlishis tiyah gula shleima." Hashem doesn't want the gula shlishis to come before its time, because if it does, it will be like the gula shenis. It will be a temporary gula. He wants us to wait for the real thing. So, therefore, if we do it too soon, it won't be it. So he says, "V'lo yosifu oy b'nei avla la'noisai." After this third gula, there won't be any more gulas. V'kol zeh sheyesh kol zman sheyesh shoyer poyer rosh v'lano ein Yisrael nigolim. As long as there's still sins among the Jews, they can't have this full redemption. Ad she'is labnu kol ha'ksamim, until all their stains are cleaned off. So he says they have to first be misak in this chet before the gula can come. And he goes on, he says that the tikkun of the chet could only come in exile, out of Eretz Yisrael. And then he says, V'zeu sh'amar ha'navi, his oiri shnei pa'amim. There's two shvuos here. Wake up. Two wake-ups, which are corresponding to the two oaths. She'yishbiya HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'shnei dvarim. He made us promise two things. Hanal, shelo yalu k'choyma v'shelo yarbu b'tefillah. Not to go up with war and not to fight, not to daven too much. All right. So they bring a raya from here that he holds that the shvu shelo yalu b'choyma is exactly like the Avnei Nezer says, that it's not to fight a war.
Yeah.
So if this is the case, I mean, which it seems to be, so we have to say that the other Avos Yonasan, which is in Parshas Vayikra, is talking about a different shvua. He's talking about the shvua shelo yitchachu is a case, not the shvua shelo yalu b'choyma. And they're both true. It's not a contradiction, because one shvua is talking about war, which, by the way, the Tzionim were over on that shvua too, but that's beside the point. And the other shvua is talking about coming back even with permission.
Yes.
Okay. So let's continue now. Va'ani Tama, the Vayoel Moshe, the Satmar Rebbe asks, Ha'ech bana al zeh. How could the Avnei Nezer build upon this Rashi Yisoid Gadol Kol Kach, such a big foundation, al lashon, on the lashon of Yad Chazaka? She'imu b'shus eyev shalom b'lashon Yad Chazaka. How could he assume that if you have permission, then you can't say the words Yad Chazaka? And lidchais al yidei zeh divrei agoyin zal b'avos yonasan. How could he use that to slug up the avos yonasan? So he says, Reishis, first of all, I can show you psukim that show that Yad Chazaka doesn't mean with war. What are the psukim? Hinei mikra mali b'soif Parshas Shmois. There's a pasuk at the end of Parshas Shmois. Ki b'yad Chazaka yishalchem u'b'yad Chazaka yigarshem mi'artzoi. That Hashem promised Moshe Rabbeinu that Paroi would send the Yidden out with a strong hand.
And there was no war. He just said, leave. And he didn't threaten them with any weapons.
He begged them to leave, right. So, Pirush Rashi zal biyad chazaka yishalchem mipnei yadi chazaka. The first Yad Chazaka, the pasuk goes back on Hashem's strong hand with Esther Makas.
Yeah.
Shetech Zakalav, that his Makas will be strong upon him, will be Yad Chazaka Yigarshem Al Korchim Shel Yisrael. Oh, and the second Yad Chazaka goes on that Paro's strong hand will force the Yidden out. It says that Mitzrayim was strong upon the Jews to force them out.
Yes.
Why did Rashi say that the first Yad Chazaka goes on Hashem's strong hand? Because the strong hand of Paroi already says in the end of the pasuk. You don't need it to say twice. The Komer b'Yad Chazaka Yigarshem. All right. So because of that, because of the extra words, Rashi had to say that one was going on Hashem's strong hand. But you see, the Torah calls Paro's efforts and pleading with the Jews.
And there was no war. There was only pleading. There was no war.
He didn't do any war or any forcing neged Yisrael. He called them and he begged them with humility that they should run out fast. It says that he called to Moshe and Aaron in the middle of the night and he said, get up and go out of my people. So he says, Lama ba'hu va'avadav. Why did Paro with his servants all come to Moshe and Aaron? Paro told Moshe, don't see my face again. He said, yeah, I'm not going to come to you anymore. But the other way around is going to happen. He says, you're coming to me. We're not going to leave here until all your servants come to me, and they bow to me, and they say, we say Moshe showed respect to Paro by not mentioning Paro will come to him. He said that the servants will come. He didn't say Paro will come, which Agav you see from this, even during the Gulas Mitzrayim, as long as they were still there, he had to show respect to Paro.
Because I think you have to even show respect to a wicked king. Like Navos was wrong for not giving Achav his vineyard he was required to. But though Achav was a Rasha, he still had to respect the king who was the biggest Rasha.
And Eliyahu ran in front of Achav's chariot, right, to show respect to him.
Yeah, so that's why Eliyahu said, I'm bringing a famine. He said, I'm going to attack you relating to you. So even like who killed Jews spiritually with violence, still he had to respect.
Okay, so v'chalak Moshe covered the malchus. Shloi amar loy ata v'chol avdach. He didn't say you're going to come bow to me. Ukein zehu b'gemara zvachim kuf beis. Same thing we find in the Gemara. Umeviu b'Rashi zal parshas boyd b'mkoimai. Rashi brings it down. Umedrash Yalkud al akasiv kumutzu The Medrash Yalkud brings it down. Malamed shahaya Paro doifik al pischan shel Moshe v'Aaron. Paro was mamish knocking on the door of Moshe and Aaron, and he said, get out of here. So Amrullah, they said to him, Ha shoyte b'layla an yotzim. He said, you fool, we're going to leave in the middle of the night. Amrullah lahem, he said, Ha meisu kol Mitzrayim. What am I supposed to do? The whole Mitzrayim is dying, so we want to stop this makkah. So Amrullah loy mevakesh shato l'chalos es a makkah. Hazu mimcha. Do you want to stop this plague? Emor, just say the words. Harei atem b'shuschem. We don't have to actually leave physically. We could just stay. You could just say you're in your own possession. Harei atem avodav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're now Hashem's slaves. Hischil Paro tzevech lishaver heisem avodai aval achshavai harei atem b'nei chorin. Paro cried out, yes, you're free. Harei atem b'shuschem. You're in your own possession. Uveirachtem ga moisi, and Paro added on, please bless me too. Which means he's paulu alai kadesh tichla mimeni apuronius. Daven that this makkah should stop now. Okay? And they were strong upon the Yidden, and they were confusing them and pushing them to leave. Ad kan. That's the Medrash Yalkut. Im kain, hare bar shloi haya azet zal Paro shum kfiyah. You see, the Paro wasn't using any force. O yad chazakum mimenu al Yisrael. El tzavach. He cried out, Harei atem b'shuschem, you're in your own possession. V'nichnu, v'yishtachavaya, they bowed down to Moshe and Aaron. V'achnu amru b'lifnei Moshe and Aaron. V'al korchach, shemasha amru shayim avhilim v'tarim ma'isam. So we see even when the Medrash adds on the words that they were confusing them and pushing them, Lot says to go out, ein zeh ela b'hala shel tachanunim. It wasn't a physical force, it was begging. Tachanunim atzumim v'roiv dvarim, and speaking words. And by the way, what this is leading to is that anytime someone does a lot of effort with something, speaking a lot of words and begging for something, that's called Yad Chazaka also.
What it seems to be here is exactly what it shows. That Paro used no force, he was begging. On the contrary, because he was in fact too afraid to fight with them, because Paro saw, that he was afraid that they would, with some kind of extreme power, get him too. And more so, Paro claimed that he was a god, and he wasn't born from parents. He claimed that the gods made him.
So then he's not a Bechor, right?
No, because he knew the truth was really a Bechor, now he couldn't even lie he's a god anymore.
Right?
He could have said, I'm a god, and I'm going to fight you back as a god, but now he couldn't. That's how far off it is from me, and it's going to be by force. Paro said, now I'm going to send an army with my divine power. but he didn't. Which shows us it's even more so how he removed this from force.
Okay, so the point here is that using words could also be called Yad Chazaka. So what the Rebbe could do, and in fact he doesn't do this, but he could say that the Tzionim in 1948 were over on this because they used a lot of words, a lot of begging, and a lot of
even prior
pushing,
to it,
arm twisting to get the UN 1947. I meant to say
even the Balfour Declaration, are pressure to make on to sign it and write, to sign that Palestine is the official refugee place for Jews.
Okay, Uvmechilta Parshas B'Shalach.
They themselves overdid it and they revoked it. Yeah.
Uvmechilta in Parshas B'Shalach Isa Kisha Amru Hoaktoirim Sheshalach Imam. Paro sent like messengers with the Yidden out of Mitzrayim, and they sent back Sheshalach Paro Imam Paro B'Yom Ravi on the fourth day that the Yidden weren't coming back as they promised to do. Higia Pruzima Shalachem Lachsav Mitzrayim. The time has come to return to Mitzrayim. Shenemar Derech Shloishes Yamim. That they promised we're only going to go 3 days. So Amru Lahem Yisrael Kishi Yatzanu B'Shus Paro Yatzanu. They said no. When we left, we left. We really were freed by Paro. Shenemar Mimachras HaPesach Yatzu B'nei Yisrael B'Yad Rama. They went out with a strong hand on the day after the Korban Pesach. V'loy Amar Shekafa Oisam. But he didn't say that Paro forced them, let's say.
He sent them out.
El Shahai B'Shus. V'Afal Karu HaKasav B'Yad Chazaka. They still see the Torah calls that Yad Chazaka.
Wait, it was a bad thing that it says B'Shach, because I've been told that some say it's bad. Yisrael thought it was Paro sent them out, and Nashman brought them out. Was that a bad thing?
Yeah, well, that's the Medrash and Parashat B'Shalach. Lashon Oiveh.
Right, because they saw that Paro, and Hashem took part in this.
That's why there had to be Kriyas Yamsuf afterwards, to show that it was against Paro's will. Okay, but anything that a person speaks very strongly about, whether with begging, or with other actions besides war, any strong action is called a Yad Chazaka. Uva Parshas Voes Chanan, Pasuk Lamed Daled, Oy Hanisa. It says, did Hashem ever go and take one nation out of another? Lokachis loy goy mikerev goy b'masois, with trials, b'oisois, with signs, with moifs and wonders, with milchama, with war, uv Yad Chazaka. So you see side by side war and Yad Chazaka. So
right,
and
it's not absolutely separate from war, which I guess very much going to the Abnei Nezer held. It's like totally from the Abnei Nezer.
He says, Gam Sham Ef Shalafarish B'Yad Chazaka Al Ezu Kfiyah. You can't say Yad Chazaka means forcing, Shal Milchama, and again it's going on Yetzias Mitzrayim. Shahari Kvar Kasav Sham Milchama. It says Milchama there. Gam Chashav Kol Anase V'Masos B'Oisos V'Moifsim. It says that it wasn't a war. It was signs and wonders. It was the Esther Makkos. Uve Rabbi Avraham ben Ezra, the Ben Ezra appears Sham B'Yad Chazaka Sheyatzu Yisrael B'Yad Rama. He says it's not a war. It means they went out with a raised up hand, with pride. V'nira Kavana Bazel Hischazkus Yisera. A lot of strength. Shehai Lahem. Ukemosh Pirish Targum Parshas B'Shalach B'Yad Rama B'Reish Gali. The Targum says that B'Yad Rama means with a uncovered head, meaning like with a openly, before the eyes of all. Ukevar Nisbar Gam Aloshen Chayma Shemisparish Al Kamo Efanim. We also said before in Siman Yud about the word Chayma that it could be explained that way. Shirashi Zal B'Shir Shir Malakasav Ani Chayma. Rashi in his commentary on Shir Shirim says Mefarshe Al Ischazkus. He learns that it's talking about strength, B'Yira, with fear, V'Aval Hashem Yisparach, meaning if we're strong in our Avas Hashem and Galus. Ki kol inyan shal ischazkis medama l'choyma sheyesh lo koyach v'chazak. Any strength is considered like a wall because a wall is a very strong object. V'chachamenu zal amru im alisem kechoyma. They say if you came up like a wall in the time of Ezra, right, in Yom Daf Tesam base, the koya aliyah meruba. It's talking about a large number of people. Ki im aliyah meruba yoiser yesh pozeh inyan shal ischazkis. The going up with a large number of people is strong.
Besides,
like
maybe the rush of grasping could machazikim,
right.
So don't go up with grasping here, it's shown a strong way.
Okay.
As the Bible says, it means grasping strongly. The Chayim usually also don't grasp as strongly.
Okay.
In other words, to be maksik is to grasp something strongly.
Okay, that's a good raya that chazaka means just to.
That's what it means. Don't hold on to Eretz Yisrael strongly with your hand. And when Pharaoh was Magil, he was grasping to let them out.
Okay. Af im hu b'shus, and he says it's even it's even considered chayma, even though it was with permission. V'chein hu aloshen shal yad chazaka dekoi gam al yischazkas. It's going even on strength shal aliyah meruba with mass aliyah.
Does that mean you're grasping tightly onto Eretz Yisrael? Like the 8 tiny like a deacon buff.
Now I want to look at a few other Maamar that show what the Rebbe's point is, that Yad Chazaka really means with other kinds of strength, not with military strength.
Right, because when we say something with deacon buff, we don't mean military strength. We mean holding on to it strongly, or without any fights.
So take a look first. Just one relevant thing is that 20 years before Vayoel Moshe, when the Rebbe was in Hungary, 1938, and really this letter is I think 1940. He wrote a letter on page 5 of the Maamar. He wrote a letter to the Jews of different communities in Hungary.
Yeah.
And the point of the letter was because at that time Hungary was allied with Germany, and it was still peaceful there. No one was taking part of the
little Axis.
Right. So Hungary was was somewhat dangerous, not as dangerous as Poland, but it was somewhat dangerous.
Right, because 1944, they let the Germans in free because they were their allies. So they came in free without anything to attack Hungary.
Right. So 1944 is when the actual murder started, but before that,
in response to Germany losing the war, they just used their allies to let them in.
So, but this letter is from 1940, when there wasn't any real big danger on the Jews of Hungary, but it was it was possible.
So it was anti-Semitic because he said that the people who are allies hate.
So he says here so what happened was that the communities of Germany of Hungary wanted to join Aguda, because the Aguda was the organization of Polish Jewry and German and Russian Jewry. Yeah. That was the Rebbe was opposed to them because they were moving in the direction of Zionism, even though they really were. A lot of them were against it, but some of them were in favor of collaborating with the Zionists. Yeah. Starting in 1937, and basically at this time, the Zionists gave the Aguda control of some of the certificates for immigration to Palestine. Mm-hmm. So some people wanted to join the Aguda in order to have benefit from these certificates and try to get out of Europe. And the Rebbe was not opposed to going to Palestine to get out of Europe. It's important to know that. But he still said that one should not go as part of the Zionist movement.
Right, you should go as an immigrant, not as a signer, that you're part of Zionism.
Right, which was very difficult because most of the certificates were controlled by the Zionists and the Aguda who allied themselves with them. So he says here...
It's harder to move because they made moving conditional that you join, you're part of Zionism, which is... Also, I'll get themselves, because what do they want? Palestine or Zionism? But so it's true, they only want themselves, not you move to Palestine. If the only one you sign it, you're Zionist.
So he says, now, by the way, this letter, the Rebbe wrote and made many copies of it and sent it to all the different cities. And during the war, it was lost. And during his whole lifetime, he never saw the letter again. And when he wrote Vayoel Moshe, he said, I wish I would have had this letter in front of me, because I wanted to see the Maamar I brought in the letter. Wow. But after his patira, it was located. And he says on the bottom here, Yizachar L'Tov Reb Aaron Tzvi Katz, who saved the tshuva during the war, and they published it afterwards. In any case, he says like this, on your main question, whether you should join Aguda. He says, now it's known that the Aguda joined up with the Zionist organization. He said there was never anything as bad as this for the Jewish people. They caused a lot more damage than the Biryonim even.
Because the Biryonim themselves, wanted to fight war, and they were, or as it considered, those are the Koshkin Tzionim.
Okay, so the Anshe Aguda halchu imam shlu v'yad. The Aguda joined hands with them, and he says, Gam levakish me'amem shol limsor artzenu akdoisha b'yad hakoifrim. They also want to ask, the Aguda, he's saying, wants to ask the government of England to give over the Eretz Yisrael into the hand of the Koifrim and the Maharsim Hoelu. So then he goes on and he says in the next paragraph here, he says, even besides the fact that they're kofrim and they want to make the Yidden do Averis, he says, V'gam hoya chas v'shalom sakana atzuma l'klal Yisrael k'mavur b'sefer Abbas Yonason. The Rabban Shal Yisrael Baal Urim V'tumim Zal b'haftaras voice chanan. He says, the Rabbi Yonason Abshit says, and this is the whole thing that we read before, that going up to Eretz Yisrael, even with permission, if it's not the right zman, it's a big danger. So he quotes this here. Okay, then I want to show you a few Maamar comments where we see the Yad Chazaka does not mean necessarily war.
First or it doesn't even, because Machzikim is also grasping.
Right, okay.
If it's Lashon Gevura, Yad Gevura, that only one, because a Gibor, we say one who fights, because Ezehu Gibor covers his Yitzro. So Gevura is the strength for fighting. So we say Ezehu Gibor covers his Yitzro, just proves it more. Even Alexander asked the Jews, who do we call strong? They say me, but they say if a man can fight war, it's somewhere of the strength. The ones who could do that would overcome it. So I said Yad Gevura, that would make sense then.
Okay, so the first one is the Mignois Avram, Rabbi Avram Lichtenstein.
When did he live? Where did he live?
1800s, Poland or Russia. And he wrote a sefer called Kanfei Nesharim on Chumash, and this is a lesser known sefer called Mignois Avram. So I don't have the actual sefer, but I have the Efes Biltecha, which is
sold, or you can only get it from Hebrew books.
I don't even have it on Hebrew books. I couldn't find it there.
Really? So how'd you get this?
So this, someone, when we published Efes Biltecha Goyalenu, which is a liquid sefer, it combines all the different sources. So 7-8 years ago, we published this sefer. Someone found the sefer Mignois Avram.
But the manuscript of it?
Not the manuscript. I think it's published, printed, but
really. So where'd you
it's
get
just
it?
a very difficult. I'm not the one who found it, so I can't tell you that. Anyway, so Sefer says like this. He says, when the Beis Mikdash was destroyed, the young Kohanim took the keys to the Azara, the Medrash, or the Gemara in Tainus.
How does the story go exactly?
The Gemara in Tainus, that the young Kohanim took the keys to the Azara, they threw them up to the sky, and they said, Ribono Shel Olam, if we're not going to be trusted by you to be the trustees,
the gatekeepers,
the trustees of the Beis Hamikdash, Harei hamaftechos misturim lecha, the keys are given back to you. Ukamin pas yad yard min hashamayim v'kibel hamaftechos. A hand came down from the sky and took the keys. The Gemara in Tainus.
Yeah.
So v'akavana bazeh, he says the meaning of this is Yair oizen b'limudim. It teaches us something, a lesson. She'Yisrael begalus chalila lahem lasois hishtadlus biyad chazaka. God forbid to make any efforts with a strong hand.
Yeah.
So he says efforts are called strong hand. Ima pi malchei umas ha'olam v'sarim, whether with interceding with the kings and the officers of the governments, or yelchu b'chayma, or going up with by force. Kulam ke'echad v'ish le'achi v'yachazek, going up maybe not by force, maybe as a large group. Each one strengthening the other and saying, "Boyu v'nelchu Yerushalayim." Let's go up to Yerushalayim biyad chazaka. Now he didn't live in the time of the Zionists. I think he lived in the early 1800s, and still he's writing this as if he's reacting to Zionism. He says, "Biyad chazaka, go up to Yerushalayim with a strong hand. V'livnois Beis Hamikdash." Oy nefayis la'melech toiger, or maybe we'll convince the king of Turkey, the Sultan, right? B'damim, with money. Ad ki yimkor lanu kol Medina Eretz Yisrael, until he sells us the whole Medina of Eretz Yisrael. Liyois lanu kimikenim, which is, by the way, Herzl wanted to do that. He wanted to buy up a big piece of land from the Sultan of Turkey.
Well, it was under the Turkish Empire at the time, Palestine?
Yeah.
When did the British take it over the Turkish Empire?
1917.
I see. Oh yeah, that's when they started a new attempt from that creation when the British took over.
That's when the Balfour Declaration was sent. So he says, "V'nivne beis bayis." Let's buy up Eretz Yisrael and let's build a Beis Hamikdash. V'nakriv karbanos, and bring karbanos. He says, "Aval chalila lanu zois." We can't do this. Chas v'shalom to do this. Ad yare ruach chesed mimarim, until Hashem puts the spirit of kindness. V'yishlach Yeshua al yedei Mashiach, and He sends down Mashiach to do the redemption. Uva Hasham mimelech Yoshev marim, with the permission of Hashem, the king of Shemaim, not with permission from the Sultan. That's the pshat in this hand that took the keys. because it's only in his hand. Now the keys are in his hand. And he goes on to say,
so show that the key back into Eretz Yisrael is in Hashem's hands. How through the key that his hand took it, because now the Eretz Yisrael has been locked for us. Hashem will give us the way back to it. And either Kohanim did, not anybody else, the holy people, Eretz Yisrael, who would want to be there the most.
And they gave it back. And
the very Kohanim who did the avodah.
He says a mashal here.
Yeah.
He says, I don't have to read inside, I don't have time, but he says, let's say someone comes to a house that's locked, and he wants to get in, and it looks like the owner's not home, and he starts banging on the door, and no one answers. So what could he do? He could force the door open.
But there's an owner. Of course,
there's an owner. So we say to him, "Shaita, stop." He says, "There's an owner to this house." Fool, right? The owners have the keys. You could wait for them to come home and open the house. Why are you banging down the door?
Because if it's locked, obviously there's somebody who locked it.
Right.
It doesn't mean obviously somebody locked it.
And he goes on and says, that's shot in the Shevuos, Yishbati Eschem.
Wait, this is the book Megadnos Avraham?
Right, Mignos Avraham.
Mignos Avraham, yeah.
Rabbi Avraham Lichtenstein in early 1800s Poland.
Yeah.
I think Prajna was his city.
Uh-huh.
Okay, it's one more Makam. Then I have the Yad Mordechai.
Who wrote the
Mordechai Rottenberg, Rav of Antwerp, before the war, 1937. There was a Knesset Gedoel of Aguda. When Aguda asked the appeal commission of the British was then about to decide whether to give a piece of Eretz Israel to the Zionists, and the Aguda took up the question, and there was Rabbi Yehuda Leib Tzirelson was in favor, and this I only copied the last page of the Tshuva of Yad Mordechai, but the rest of the Tshuva deals with what Rabbi Yehuda Leib Tzirelson said, and he slugs up all his proofs. Basically, his proofs aren't halacha proofs anyway. They're more like, don't pass up this opportunity kind of proofs. Take back Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah.
And then he says there that the Yad Mordechai there, Mordechai Rottenberg, brings down, and I think he was nifter, he was killed in the war. So this is one of the last things he wrote. He writes there that the Shevuos says, he says, Rabbi Yehuda Yishbati Achrina Ksiv, Pirish Rashi Kechoyma, Yachad Biyad Chazaka. Basically, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Zeir both agree to the Shevuah of going up as a wall. Rashi says, Yachad Biyad Chazaka. He quotes Rashi, and in the same breath, he's going to say the Avos Yonasan. Look at he says, Alma, the Chuli Alma Moidi, the Alzeh Yishpia HaKadosh Baruch Hu es Yisrael Shelo Yo'iru V'Shelo Yo'aru es Ha'ava, La'alo es Yachad Eretz Yisrael. He says, everyone, Rabbi Zeir and Rabbi Yehuda both agree that there's a Shevuah not to go up. The Ein L'cha Kechoyma. He says, there's no greater violation of Choyma, Yoister Milechoinen Mamleches Yisrael Be'eretz Yisrael. Besides, as there's no greater violation than founding a Jewish government in Eretz Yisrael, a Jewish state. V'ayin v'avos Yonasan la'gon Rabbi Yonasan zatzal b'haftarah l'Shabbos Nachemu shekosav al pasuk zeh yishbati eschem v'zeh l'shoynai. He brings the whole Avos Yonasan.
Yeah.
So you see that he's not seeing a steer between Rashi and Avos Yonasan.
Yeah.
Okay, then a couple more quick things. The Riyaz, which is an anicle of the anicle of Rabbi Shai Detrani. You know the Tosfos Rid? Tosfos Rid on Shas?
The Riyaz was in Vienna.
I don't think so. I don't know if maybe you're meaning different Riyaz. There are two Riyazes.
Yitzchak
or Zerua. Oh, so that's not this Riyaz. Yitzchak or Zerua was in Vienna. He was a Rishon. This Riyaz is also a Rishon, but he wasn't. I don't know if he was in Vienna.
How do you spell this Riyaz? Same way, Reish
Yud Aleph Zayin, but it stands for something else. I think the Yud here stands for Yeshaya, and he was an anicle of the other Rabbi Shai, the Rabbi Shai Detrani, who was the Tosfos Rid.
Where did he live? In Italy? Or,
I believe Italy, because Trani is a city in Italy.
Yeah, Trani sounds Italian. That's what I thought.
Okay, so the Piskei Riyaz on Ksubas. Now again, I couldn't find the actual Sefer, so I brought from here. He says he brings the Gemara in Ksubas is Kamisha Ein Lo Elokah. I didn't quote the whole thing here, but V'chol Adar B'chutz La'aretz Doima Kamisha Ein Lo Elokah Shenemar Ki Geirshuni Hayoim. He brings the Gemara that says that if you live in Chutz La'aretz, it's as if you have no God. And still, we're not allowed to go up together with a strong hand, like a gathering of the exiles. Because we're not allowed to speed up the end until Hashem makes our redemption happen. So you see that even though he used Yad Chazaka, he still seems to be saying that it's not allowed to do it early. So
our tradition brings us down the Shevuos.
What, the Riyaz?
Yeah, the Archia brings down the Riyaz actually, and the Hebrew, the Archia brings it down.
That's interesting to know. I didn't know that.
But the article does actually mention some Rebbe, what he says on this.
Really?
Because the article shows Shevuos, you'll see.
Okay. Okay, and then...
and it even brings down the Ahavas Yehonas too, just in case you want to know. Look at the article on
that's good.
Shevuos, you'll see.
Okay, so, and they're getting to it soon, Daf Yoim, aren't they? I think they're holding almost there. Okay, anyway, Torah's Moshe of the Chasam Sefer, Parsha Shoftim, page 9, the Maamar Koimus, and he goes on the Haftorah, Parsha Shoftim, actually.
Yeah, this I actually see in this one, where Chazal already said we could have a Geula with our own power, like we had before, or when we're totally free, but we don't want it.
We don't want it. Now he says
it was possible as is back in the day. Now that who say it wasn't possible until this time when Hashem finally gave it to us. He
says Ma Navu al Har Ragli Mevaster Mashmiya Shalom Mevaster Toiv Mashmiya Yeshua, and basically the pasuk he wants to go on is Ke'ayin ba'ayin yiru b'shuv Hashem tziyam. When the real Geula comes, we'll see it eye to eye.
Not like the first or second. There was down. There's the first one only to our Salah, and the other one.
Yeah, he says in the other ones we needed the Nevi'im to tell us that this is the Geula.
And more so, even then it wasn't fully proven. But when Mashiach comes, everybody will see it, and those who aren't worthy will automatically simply not be worthy, and they will say no.
Okay, so he says, the past Geulas weren't seen by everybody. They'll show with their fingers, they'll say, it was possible many times, there could have been an incomplete redemption.
Or a complete redemption.
Incomplete, he says.
Yeah.
Or there could have been peace between us and the nations.
Yeah.
Or it could have been even more than that. It could have been a real geula. There would have been opportunities for it. He's not saying it's mutter, by the way.
He's just meaning it
could have physically happened that there would have been opportunities for this.
But again, it's kind of the Zionists say that only B'yad Hashem happened, after the war.
And by the way, if you look into history, there were a few times when the nations gave permission to come back to Eretz Yisrael. There was the Persian retaking of Eretz Yisrael from the Byzantines, I think, in the 600s. And even before that, there was Julian the Apostate, the Emperor of Rome, who reversed Christianity for a very short time. And he was a nephew of Constantine. Constantine was the one who made Rome Christian. So Julian was later than Constantine, like about 60 years later, and he reversed it. And he said, no, Christianity is wrong. And not only that, he said, I'm letting the Jews come back and build the Beis Hamikdash. So there was a short period where that was allowed.
I think Spain once let Jews move back, supposedly.
Really? Spain never ruled Eretz Yisrael? I don't think they ever did.
Supposedly.
Maybe in France.
They had...
Napoleon.
There was some type of project in Spain to get Jews into power, but supposedly, I'm not saying for sure.
In any case, so he says it could have happened.
Yeah.
And it could be the Chassam Sofer is referring to these things. He says, but there's no desire in this. Even if we would compromise when the Kabul Geula Kazeh, Rak Liyos Geulim, just to get redeemed, our fathers would never consent to this. It's better for the Jews to settle, to survive, to suffer. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Suffer the length of the galus, so that at the end it should be a full geula. And I think he would say that that's probably pshat in the Shevuah, that the Shevuah is saying, don't do it because it's better for you to suffer and get the full geula shlema. So he says that's what the Mavaser is, and I'm not going to go into the whole lengthy pshat that he says here. All right, so Adkan, and next time I guess we'll continue with Siman Yud Zayin.
Yes.
It's really in the middle of an inning because Yud Zayin, the Rebbe is going to go back and say that what Yad Chazak, what Rashi meant when he says Yachad B'Yad Chazak. How do those two things fit together?
Yes.
Okay. Shkoyach.